Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. What do you want to do? Emma asked softly. Marcus shook his head.
I don't know. I can't go back to my old life looking like this. But I don't know how to be this. He gestured vaguely at his altered body. Emma was quiet for a long moment, then said hesitantly, You know, you could come to stay with me for a while, until you figure things out.
The offer brought fresh tears to Marcus's eyes.
You'd do that? Of course I would, dummy,
Emma said, pulling him into a hug. You're my little brother. Or sister, I guess?
Whatever. The point is, I've got your back. We'll get through this together.
For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. He wasn't alone in this. Whatever came next, he had Emma in his corner. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparations. Emma helped Marcus pick out some basic clothing that fit his new body. They met with social workers to begin the process of updating legal documents. Marcus agonized over what to tell their parents, but in the end decided honesty was the best policy. The phone call was awkward and emotional, but their mom and dad were ultimately supportive, if confused. Finally, 2.5 weeks after his world had turned upside down, Marcus was discharged from the hospital. Stepping out into the sunshine felt surreal after so long cooped up inside. Emma's apartment was small but cozy, with a spare bedroom that would serve as Marcus's new home for the foreseeable future. As they unpacked the few belongings they'd gathered, reality began to sink in. This was Marcus's life now. That first night, lying awake in an unfamiliar bed, doubt and fear threatened to overwhelm him. What if he could never adjust to this new body? What if people from his old life rejected him? How would he ever explain this to his colleagues at the church? But as the days turned to weeks, Marcus slowly began to find his footing. Emma was endlessly patient, helping him navigate everything from clothes shopping to makeup application. They spent hours talking through Marcus's fears and hopes for the future. Gradually, Marcus started to venture out into the world again. At first, just quick trips to the corner store or walks in the park, then longer outings, a movie, dinner at a restaurant. Each new experience brought its own challenges. Using public restrooms was a particular source of anxiety. But with Emma's encouragement, Marcus pushed through his discomfort. As his confidence grew, so did his curiosity about his new identity. He experimented with different styles of clothing and hair, trying to find what felt most natural. Some days he embraced a more feminine appearance, other times he preferred a more androgynous look. Through it all, Marcus grappled with questions of gender and identity. Was he still the same person inside, just in a different body? Or had the changes gone deeper, altering his very sense of self? There were no easy answers, but as the months passed, Marcus found a measure of peace in accepting the uncertainty. This was his reality now, for better or worse. All he could do was take it one day at a time. Nearly 6 months after that fateful morning when everything changed, Marcus stood before the mirror in Emma's apartment. The face that gazed back at him was both familiar and strange, softer features framed by shoulder-length waves of reddish-brown hair. Curves filled out the simple blouse and jeans he wore. A delicate silver cross hung at his throat, a gift from Emma, a reminder of the faith that had always been his anchor.
You ready?
Emma called from the other room. Marcus took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders.
As I'll ever be,
he replied. Today marked a major milestone, his first day back at work at the church. After months of correspondence and meetings with Father Thomas and the parish council, they had agreed to welcome Marcus back in his new identity. It wouldn't be easy. There would be stares, whispers, awkward questions. But this place had always felt like home to Marcus. He wasn't ready to give that up, no matter how much had changed. Emma appeared in the doorway, car keys in hand. "You've got this," she said with an encouraging smile, "and I'll be right there with you." Marcus nodded, gathering his courage. Whatever came next, he knew he could face it. He was still himself at his core, Changed, yes, but not broken. Still driven by the same faith, the same desire to serve. As they headed out the door, Marcus sent up a silent prayer of thanks for Emma's unwavering support, for the second chance he'd been given, and for the strength to embrace this new chapter of his life, whatever it might hold. The drive to St. Michael's passed in comfortable silence. As the familiar stone facade came into view, Marcus felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation swirling in his stomach. Emma pulled into a parking spot and turned to face him. "Remember, you don't have to do this if you're not ready. We can turn around and go home any time." Marcus shook his head. "No, I need to do this. It's time." With a deep breath, he opened the car door and stepped out. The cool morning air carried the scent of freshly mown grass and blooming flowers. Birds chirped cheerfully in the trees lining the church grounds. As they approached the main entrance, Marcus spotted a familiar figure waiting by the doors. Father Thomas's face broke into a warm smile as they drew near. "Marcus, my child, welcome home," he said, enveloping Marcus in a grandfatherly hug. Tears pricked at Marcus's eyes as he returned the embrace. "Thank you, Father. It's good to be back." Father Thomas stepped back, regarding Marcus with twinkling eyes. "Well now, don't you look lovely? That hair suits you." A surprised laugh bubbled up in Marcus's throat. Trust Father Thomas to put him at ease with his easygoing manner. "Come along, then," the priest continued, ushering them inside. "The rest of the staff is eager to see you." As they made their way through the familiar halls, Marcus felt some of his nervousness begin to fade. This place had been such an integral part of his life for so long. Changed as he was, he still felt that sense of belonging. In the parish office, a small group had gathered, longtime church employees who had known Marcus for years. There were a few gasps and wide-eyed stares as he entered, but overall the reception was warmer than he'd dared hope. Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly parish secretary, was the first to approach. She studied Marcus's face intently for a moment, then nodded as if confirming something to herself. "Well now," she said briskly, "you may look different on the outside, but those are still Marcus Henderson's eyes looking out at me. Welcome back, dear." Her matter-of-fact acceptance seemed to break the ice. Soon Marcus found himself surrounded by colleagues offering hugs and words of support. There were, of course, many questions. Marcus did his best to explain what had happened, though in truth he still didn't fully understand it himself. But his coworkers seemed more concerned with how he was coping than with the medical details. As the impromptu welcome party began to wind down, Father Thomas drew Marcus aside. "Now then," he said. "I imagine you're eager to get back to work. Why don't you start by helping Mrs. Abernathy sort through the donations for the food pantry?" Marcus nodded gratefully. The familiar task would be a good way to ease back into things. As he headed toward the storage room, Emma caught his arm. "You good if I head out?" she asked. "I can stay if you need me to." "I'm okay," Marcus assured her. "Really, thank you for everything, Em." She pulled him into a quick hug. "Anytime, little sister. Call me if you need anything." Watching her go, Marcus felt a surge of affection and gratitude. He didn't know where he'd be without Emma's unwavering support these past months. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of activity. Sorting donations, answering phones, tidying the sanctuary. It felt good to be useful again, to fall back into the routines of church life. There were a few awkward moments, parishioners doing double takes when they saw him, fumbling over which pronouns to use. But overall, people seemed to take their cues from the staff's easy acceptance of Marcus's new appearance. As lunchtime approached, Marcus found himself drawn once again to the altar. Kneeling there, he closed his eyes and let the familiar sense of peace wash over him. So much had changed in his life, but this connection to something greater than himself, remained constant. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus knew he could face them with faith as his foundation. A gentle hand on his shoulder roused him from his contemplation. Father Thomas stood beside him, a knowing smile on his weathered face. "Come along, my dear," he said. "Mrs. Abernathy has put together quite a spread for lunch, and I dare say you've earned it after all your hard work this morning." The coming weeks and months would bring new challenges as Marcus continued to navigate life in his changed body. There would be difficult conversations with parishioners, moments of self-doubt, days when the disconnect between his inner sense of self and outer appearance felt overwhelming. Through it all, Marcus held fast to the things that had always defined him: his faith, his compassion, his desire to serve others. Those core aspects of his identity remained unchanged, a solid foundation on which to build this new chapter of his life. Marcus settled into his new role at the church with a growing sense of confidence. The initial awkwardness of using the women's restroom faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance of his new reality. One sunny Tuesday morning, as Marcus arranged fresh flowers on the altar, he heard footsteps echoing through the empty sanctuary. Glancing up, he saw an unfamiliar woman hesitantly approaching. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I was hoping to speak with someone about joining the church." Marcus smiled warmly. "Of course, I'd be happy to chat with you about that. I'm Marcus, by the way." The woman's eyes widened slightly as she took in Marcus's appearance, but to her credit, she recovered quickly. "Nice to meet you, Marcus. I'm Rebecca." As they sat in a nearby pew, Rebecca explained that she'd recently moved to the area and was looking for a spiritual home. "I grew up Catholic," she said, "but I've been away from the church for a long time. I'm not sure if I'll fit in anymore." Marcus nodded understandingly. "I think a lot of people feel that way when they're considering coming back to their faith. Can I ask what's brought you here now?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment, twisting her hands in her lap. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I just feel like something's missing in my life. Like I need guidance, I guess, a sense of purpose." "I can certainly relate to that feeling," Marcus said with a gentle laugh. "Life has a way of throwing us curveballs sometimes, doesn't it?" Rebecca's gaze sharpened with interest. "It sounds like you're speaking from experience." Marcus hesitated, unsure how much to share. But something in Rebecca's open, earnest expression made him want to be honest. "Let's just say I've been through some pretty major changes in my life recently," he said carefully. "It's forced me to reevaluate a lot of things about myself and my place in the world. But through it all, my faith has been a constant, an anchor when everything else felt uncertain." Rebecca nodded slowly. "That's beautiful, and if you don't mind me asking, how has the church community responded to your changes?" Marcus smiled. "With more grace and acceptance than I ever could have hoped for. It hasn't always been easy, but I've found so much support here. People who see me for who I am, not just what I look like on the outside." Tears welled up in Rebecca's eyes. That's what I'm hoping to find. Somewhere I can belong, just as I am." Impulsively, Marcus reached out and squeezed her hand. "Well, Rebecca, I think you've come to the right place. Why don't we go find Father Thomas? I'm sure he'd love to meet you and talk more about getting involved here." As they stood, Rebecca gave Marcus a grateful smile. "Thank you. You've been so kind. I was nervous about coming here today, but talking to you has made me feel so much more at ease." "I'm glad," Marcus said sincerely. "And who knows? Maybe someday you'll be the one welcoming newcomers and helping them feel at home." As they walked together towards Father Thomas's office, Marcus felt a warmth spreading through his chest. This, he realized, was why he'd fought so hard to keep his place in the church despite all the changes in his life. The opportunity to connect with others, to offer comfort and support. It was what he'd always felt called to do. For the first time in months, Marcus felt truly at peace with his new identity. He was exactly where he was meant to be, doing the work he was meant to do. The journey ahead might still hold challenges, but in this moment, Marcus knew without a doubt that he was on the right path. Father Thomas looked up from his desk as they entered, his weathered face creasing into a welcoming smile. "Ah, Marcus, and who's this you've brought to see me?"
"Father, this is Rebecca," Marcus said. "She's interested in joining our community."
As Father Thomas stood to greet their visitor, Marcus stepped back, allowing them space to talk. He watched as the priest's gentle manner put Rebecca visibly at ease, just as it had done for Marcus himself so many times over the years. Excusing himself quietly, Marcus slipped out of the office and made his way back to the sanctuary. The late morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the stone floors in jewel-toned patterns. Marcus paused before the altar, bowing his head in a moment of silent gratitude. For the millionth time, he marveled at the strange and wondrous path his life had taken. Though the physical changes to his body had been drastic and unexpected, in many ways he felt more authentically himself than ever before. The sound of the office door opening drew Marcus from his reverie. He turned to see Rebecca emerging, her face alight with a new sense of purpose. "How did it go?" Marcus asked, though he could already guess the answer from her expression. Rebecca beamed. "Wonderfully. Father Thomas is so kind. He's invited me to attend the new members class starting next week, and he mentioned that you lead a Bible study group on Thursday evenings." Marcus nodded, pleasantly surprised.
"I do, yes. You're more than welcome to join us if you'd like."
"I think I will," Rebecca said. "It would be nice to have a familiar face there." As they chatted, making plans for Rebecca's involvement in church activities, Marcus felt a renewed sense of excitement about his role in the community. Each new person who found their way here brought unique gifts and perspectives, helping them integrate into church life, watching them grow in faith and fellowship. It was deeply fulfilling work. The rest of the day passed in a flurry of activity. Marcus assisted with preparations for an upcoming charity auction, helped a group of volunteers assemble care packages for local homeless shelters, and spent an hour on the phone with a homebound parishioner who was feeling lonely. By the time evening rolled around, Marcus was pleasantly tired, but deeply satisfied. As he gathered his things to head home, Father Thomas appeared in the doorway of the parish office.
"Ah, Marcus, I'm glad I caught you before you left," the older man said. "I wanted to thank you for welcoming Rebecca so warmly this morning. You have quite a gift for putting people at ease." Marcus felt his cheeks warm at the praise. "I'm just happy I could help. She seems like she'll be a wonderful addition to our community." Father Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed. You know, Marcus, I've been thinking, we've had several new members join us recently who are, shall we say, from non-traditional backgrounds, people who might not feel immediately comfortable in a typical church setting."
Marcus tilted his head, curious where this was going.
"That's true. I've noticed that as well. Well," Father Thomas continued, "I was wondering if you might be interested in taking on a more formal role in our outreach efforts. Perhaps developing some programs specifically geared towards welcoming those who might feel marginalized or uncertain about their place in the church." Marcus's heart leapt at the suggestion. "Father, I would be honored. That's exactly the kind of work I've been hoping to do more of." The priest's eyes twinkled. "I thought you might say that. Why don't you take some time to think about what sort of initiatives you'd like to pursue? We can meet next week to discuss the details." As Marcus left the church that evening, his mind was already buzzing with ideas. Driving home, Marcus found himself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought him to this point. The pain and confusion of his physical transformation had been immense. But out of that crucible, a new sense of purpose had emerged. He thought of Rebecca and all the others like her who were searching for a place to belong. Marcus knew firsthand how powerful it could be to find acceptance and support in a faith community. Now he had the opportunity to help create that welcoming space for others. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.